Alright, how's it going, guys? We're back on the 528 today. And this car in the last video had the lifter problem. The lifters were stuck. The ones that had here, they were stuck also. We couldn't get enough of a full set to put it back together. So what we have right now is we have the lifters we just got off eBay. And we got a whole set of them. The owner of the car got them and sent them to me. And there's 10 of them that are good. The rest of them are stuck. It doesn't really matter what I do to those. Just like the other ones, you can pull them with pliers or vice grips. You can push in on them, you know, tap them with the hammer. They won't move. They're stuck. They're junk. You put them in the car, they might free back up, maybe, but I sure the hell wouldn't want to do it. Then you start the car up and it's ticking again. Then you got to take it all back apart again. So what we have here, we have 3 or 4 lifters out of the car we took out originally. They were all good. We have 10 good ones here at 17. We needed 24. So I went and got a car to work on to set the timing and put a starter on in Tennessee yesterday. Luckily, Richard had some extra ones in the back seat, and we have enough to make a good set. That was extremely lucky, because if not, we would have been waiting again. And the owner of the 528 wants the car back. I fully understand that, but you know, thanks to Richard, we're not waiting anymore, and we're gonna go and reassemble it today. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, we're going to get the cam boxes. We're gonna turn them upside down like this. We'll set them over here like that, where they'll stay. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna take a microfiber. We're gonna wipe out the holes where the lifters go in. Sorry, big ass wasp flew by my head. We're going to wipe all these holes out. We're going to take our engine assembly lube, which we've had in the freezer, so it's really cold and stiff. And we're going to wipe the lifters down one at a time. And we're going to put the engine assembly lube around the lifters. We're going to slide them down in the box like that. And we're going to put some around the top here. And what that's going to do when we have to drop this back in on the studs, that's going to make it so the lifters won't fall out. Now, a lot of guys use a wire to do this. You can do that. I found it tends to, the ones in the middle tend to want to fall out because the wire has a lot of give to it. It's kind of awkward to do that. I don't like doing that. This needs to work much better. Do not use a heavy grease, because it will stop up the lifters and cause them all to stick. Okay, so here we are. We have her all stuck in there, and you can see each lifter. I have the, let me get the focus here. I have the engine pre-lube all around the tops of them, and hopefully that will hold it in long enough for me to put it up here and flip it down and put it on the exhaust side. Now, the intake cam is easier to do because the way the head's tilted, it's more of a, take that back. The intake cam is more difficult than the exhaust. So the intake is more straight up and down, so you have to have a little more pre-lube on it. You got to be quick. You have to flip it over and slide it on the studs here before the lifters fall out of the cam box. So let's go ahead and put this exhaust one on. I don't think it'll cause any trouble. Then we'll go ahead and go back and do the intake. Okay, so we got her installed. I just flipped it upside down and went right on her, no problem. Usually it doesn't go quite that easy. And you want to make sure all the lifters are in there. And the cam box at this point is just loose. And what we're going to do next, before we put the caps on and the cam back in, we're going to take our microfiber. We're going to wipe out all these cam journals. And we'll wipe off our camshaft to make sure there's no debris. We'll take our engine pre-lube. We'll just put a little dot in each little dip. That way when we start it, you're not starting dry, you know, at first. It has a little pre-lube. It gives it a chance to pump some oil up to it, and it gives it kind of a little bit of a chance. You know, this should work really well. Obviously, when you start the car, don't get in and rev it up. Let it idle for a little bit. You shouldn't hear any ticking noise. You might after the first few seconds, and it should go away right away. So we're going to go ahead and pre-lube that and drop the cam in, and then we'll go ahead and pull this other box off. And the lifters are not in the intake box. It's just sitting back on her. And we'll do that one, and we'll come back. Okay, so here we go. We actually got the first try. Usually it'll take you a try or two, but I think my decision to put the Pre-lube in the freezer was a good one because there was no issue at all. And you just hold it up there and you flip it on real quick, and you just kind of have one go at it. If you hold them upside down very long, the lifters will fall out of the box. So this is what we're going to do next. We've already cleaned this camshaft, just wiped it off with a dry rag, cleaned the cam journals. We put a little pre-lube in there, and these you can see here, we're going to want to take this microfiber. We're going to clean all the oil off from around where the bolts are and in the journal. It don't have to be absolutely perfect, but it needs to be pretty good. You don't want any crud holding the bearing cap up. And then we're going to go ahead and wipe off all the lobes on this camshaft, and we're going to set it back in there. Don't forget to set it up with the little, let me see here, the little dots up, because if you don't, you need to be pretty close on the timing. So right now, this car does not have the crank pin in it. It is set on marks, the top dead center. So we know once we bolt the cams down, they're going to be right there, and we can take our wrench and adjust it accordingly with a nut, and that'll give us plenty of room. If you put them totally upside down, you try to turn them over, the valves are going to hit the pistons, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have to end up turning your crankshaft a little further and then try to slip it past and line it back up. It's easier just to go ahead and do it this way. We are going to go ahead and look. I have these turned so none of the lobes are actually up. That's sitting down there pretty good. We'll go in and we'll try to put the cap on. If any of the lobes are down a little bit, we'll try to put that cap on first and snug it up. That'll suck the cam down. That'll make sure you don't break it. And then we'll go ahead and do the sequence. I don't remember. I think these are 15 foot-pounds with a torque wrench. You'll go back and forth in the middle out 2 or 3 times to get them all seated down to that. Now, there's something else I want to tell you guys. You got to be careful when you're taking these nuts off these caps up here. And these studs like to turn out. I like to use a battery impact. A lot of you guys that work at the shops, that's like a cardinal sin. I like to use a battery impact to take them off, not put them on. And what that's going to ensure that when you reverse the nut off of the stud, you reverse quickly. And if you try to take these nuts off with a ratchet to remove the cams, what you're going to do, you're going to turn these studs out of the head. You're not going to notice it. I see it all the time. You go to run this back down, it's going to pull the threads out of the cylinder head. And then you either have to find a time cert and drill and tap it, or you got to take the cylinder head off, take it to your machine shop. So be very cautious of that. A good way to measure that is to get a straight edge, which I don't have one out here, and check all your stud heights, something like that. And then you're going to make sure that they're all at the same height, right? That's one good way to check that. I need to get I know these are good. We'll go ahead and check them anyway. We'll go and get a long metal straight edge, and we'll check them all like that before we put anything back together. But that's how you reinstall the lifters back in the boxes in the camshafts. A lot of you guys, once it comes to trying to get the lifters back in, it's a struggle. A lot of guys give up at that point. Don't give up. It's not that difficult if you know all the little tricks to it. We'll come in here, just like I said before, with a little bit of pre-lube. We'll just wipe it on there. You don't really even have to have that much. Just a little something in the middle so when you put the camshaft back in, it's not dry. Okay, so here's everything installed. Everything's just sitting on there. The nuts are not on it yet. And you don't want to leave that stuff exposed. What you're going to want to do here, especially if you're outside like I am, once you put the pre-lube on the bearings, you want to put it on right away. And so we have everything just kind of setting down here, and you can see these upper caps have E, like E1, E2, E3, E4. The bottom ones have A. And a lot of people think that the E means exhaust, but it's actually the opposite. These caps are always the opposite of what you think, but they start at number 1 and go back to 7 at the back. So we're going to go ahead and torque these down, and then before we put the valve cover back on, we're going to set up the timing. At the very last, we'll take a little bit of pre-lube and we'll wipe on each one of these cam lobes. That way it's not dry when it first goes over. This car, we're also going to change the oil in it before I start it. This had a lot of condensation in it. It looked bad. We don't want to, if that is what ruined the old lifters, we don't want to ruin them again. So that's the plan anyway. We'll go ahead and get a little further on it and come back. Okay, so we're all torqued down here. We used our 3/8 torque wrench with our 11 millimeter. These are 11 millimeter. We torqued them all down, starting from the middle, going out, 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 and all the way out to the very end like that. And then you just go back and recheck them one more time. The same sequence. The same thing on the cam. They should all tighten down good. You can see, for the most part, the studs are all pretty much, I don't know why this thing won't focus. Studs are all pretty much even. They're sticking up the same amount. And like I said, if you get one that's sticking up too far, you need to address it before you tighten these down. You can take 2 of these nuts, tie them up with a wrench together, and that'll run that stud down further in the head. This is probably good practice if you are already taking the head off. Go ahead and check this before you put the head back in the car. This is something you can do very easy on the workbench. You know, like I said before, take your straight edge light across the studs, make sure they're all up the same height, and check that. It's super easy to do when it's not in the car. When it's in the car, it's a little more of a pain in the butt, especially if one's stripped. You know, you could easily do the time starts on those when it's not in the engine bay here. So what we're going to do now, I think we're going to go ahead and reassemble the timing on it. I'm not going to take a video of this. I just did a video this last week. I'll link it here above. And if you guys want to watch the timing video, you click on that. Then what we need to do before we go any further, once the timing's back together, we need to recompression check it, make sure everything's good. The owner says he compression checked it, everything was fine. We just need to make sure, because before we put the valve cover and stuff back on, we don't have to take it back apart again. And we're also going to do a CCV delete on this car before we give it back to him. That way, all he has to do is put the catch can on it, and it's ready to go. All right, if you guys can even see this or not, it's getting dark outside. We got it all put back together, started it up. It still has a little bit of a tick. It's not the lifters. It almost sounds like one of the two things is happening here. One of the spark plugs is loose, which I did just compression check number 3. Number 3 is the only one showing misfire, and number 3 had like 235. It was really good, actually. So I don't know. We'll probably just go tomorrow, go through, delete the CCV. I could tell that's bad. There's no suction at all at the valve cover. We need to get that off of there. I'm going to probably just do a throttle body boot. He has it all taped up. And we'll check the spark plugs again for tightness. The only thing that worries me on this car is the motor mounts are so bad. Well, you probably can't see it. I could just grab a hold of it and wiggle the motor with my hand. And this car is a stick. And a lot of times with a manual 5 Series, you get a lot of that and a lot of drive shaft issues. But I think at this point, we're going to do the CCV tomorrow. Check the spark plugs. I hope the manifold, the exhaust manifold, doesn't have a crack in it. It kind of sounds like an exhaust leak. It's kind of odd. But that's it. That's all for the lifters. That part's all good. That part's all done. And stay tuned for the next video on this car. And we'll for sure get it worked out for this guy. It's been quite the process for him, and nobody can seem to fix it. So we'll stay on it and get it cleared up for him. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching today. Sorry for kind of a boring video, you might say. But that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.